Hello, everybody. It's Monday, May 11th, 2020, the 547th day of May, and this is Heady, Vermont's Mental Health Monday. I'm Kathy Bloom. This is my husband, Mark Nash, who is a licensed psychotherapist and a generally wise and loving human being. Good to talk to when you're in trouble. So here we go. I'm just going to start with one thing. It snowed over the weekend. It snowed, and that is all that I am saying about that. Although we do have another frost coming up, so treat your gardens gently. Since Friday, there were 8 new cases of COVID-19 in the state for a total of 927 cases statewide. No new deaths, which have held steady at 53. Turns out the coronavirus is spreading slower in Vermont than in any state in the Northeast, with cases doubling every 12 weeks, which is among one of the slowest rates in the nation, too. I think we rank 3rd. And modeling continues to indicate a slow in the spread of COVID-19. So, Governor Scott is continuing a very slow, gradual, measured reopening of things. On Friday, he announced that child care centers can reopen on June 1st, and summer day camps will be able to open this summer, provided that they can follow safety guidelines, which they expect to issue next week. Hopefully overnight camps, not the kid kind, the adult kind, but not the adult kind. This is like the regular kind of overnight camp, not sleepaway camp for kids or party camp for adults, regular overnight camp.
What is an overnight camp?
You know, a place where you go camping.
Oh.
I was like trying to think of like adult use overnight camps, but that just has a really different ring to it.
Do you mean like going somewhere and sleeping in a tent?
Yeah.
Oh.
Yeah. You know, state park overnight camp. But when we talk about sleepaway camps for kids, that's one thing, and then adult camps just sound like something else, which we don't mean. That's Las Vegas. So anyway, they will be open this summer, hopefully, but not yet. And while golf courses are open, out-of-staters are not welcome yet, and anyone coming into Vermont for any reason must self-quarantine for 14 days, although no one is actually enforcing that, but it's good public citizenship. And our health commissioner, Mark Levine, suggested, and I think that this is actually a really good idea, that as the state reopens, Vermonters should consider keeping a contact journal, which is a list of people that you've been in close contact with each day. So this means that if you did get sick, it would be easier to get in touch with those folks, and they could take proper precautions to further prevent the spread of COVID-19. And remember, as it's getting warm, go outside, really great thing to do, but the ticks are definitely out. So be careful, because you do not want corona with Lyme, which is a joke that my dad would have really loved. So today we are going to talk about a couple of phenomena which we think reflect basically 2 sides of the same security coin. On the one hand, we do have states that are starting to open up. They're relaxing social distancing protocols, but many of the people in those states are still hiding out. So clearly they're feeling pretty insecure about their own health and wellness. And on the other hand, we have people who've partly or completely ignored everything. They don't wear masks, or they wear them on their chin, which doesn't work, and they don't social distance. They see friends. They go on pretty much business as usual, which means, of course, those folks are feeling pretty secure. So what is going on in the vast gap between these 2 groups of people?
I don't know about the gap between them. I know that the people who are feeling wary about going out, it's probably a continuation of the insecurity that we're all feeling. We still don't know a lot about exactly what the coronavirus does, how it does it, how it transmits, how we can be absolutely sure that we're safe. Masks, social distance, is that enough? Some people are saying they're not going to go back to their old behaviors until we've got a vaccine, which could be 6 to 18 months from now. And these are people who are, we all have our own level of our sense of safety, our sense of security, our sense of mortality. Some people are a little bit more fatalistic about it, and that may be what's going on with the people who are not wearing masks, although there are other reasons there that we'll get to. But it's hard to get back to any semblance of normal when still so many things are up in the air. And so people are going to respond however they respond. And I think that what's important from a social and interpersonal standpoint is to have compassion for wherever people are on their spectrum of concern or fear, that we not shame people for acting in a way that we might consider overly cautious.
Well, because we've heard about folks going to the store and seeing people who are not distancing and confronting those people. They're doing public shaming. Or I was reading some stuff on VT Digger this morning about people who actually have been reporting what they consider to be infractions to VT Digger, to Front Porch Forum, because they don't really feel like they have any other recourse, but that they see this as an affront and in fact, even dangerous behavior.
Well, that's sort of another issue. I mean, people wearing masks confronting those not wearing masks, again, we'll get into that in a minute. I'm just talking about the people who are following safety protocols and who believe that the COVID is a serious situation, but are moving more slowly than others. So within the group of people who are taking safety precautions, we want to be patient with those who are going a little bit slower than others.
Because everybody has their own level of tolerance for insecurity, for uncertainty, for danger, for risk. Yeah,
for risk. As for confronting people who are not wearing masks or shaming people who are not wearing masks, I don't have a lot to say about that. It's potentially risky to engage in confrontation with people.
Security guard in Michigan got killed because he told someone to wear a mask, although it was his job to do that.
Yeah, exactly. You may want to consider whether it's more risky to make the confrontation, and maybe that risk feels worthwhile because this person is putting you and the rest of our society in danger from your perspective. I think I want to go back and just talk about why people might not be wearing masks. And this is not to excuse that behavior, but simply to perhaps view it with a greater sense of compassion and understanding so that we aren't immediately reactive. I don't think that the vast majority of them are wearing it as a screw you.
Or not wearing masks.
Not wearing masks as a screw you. That I know some people are doing it as a political statement, a statement of liberty and freedom, and you can't tell me what to do. There are other people who may not be wearing masks because they just don't think that there's much of a danger. They don't understand the immunology. They don't understand the rate of contagion. They may be more fatalistic. They may think that, well, if I get sick, I get sick, no big deal, and they're not thinking about the larger picture. Some of them may feel like it's an acknowledgement of vulnerability, that wearing a mask seems cowardly or weak. I think you could probably look at some toxic masculinity coming into play there, that to be masculine and tough and strong, you don't let some flu scare you.
Right. And so in a way, that's a denying of one's humanity, mortality, vulnerability, because you might be tough, but you can still get sick.
Virus is going to get you.
Yeah. And so, I think, Mike Pence not wearing a mask was a perfect example of that. He was at NIH. Everybody was wearing masks. They said this is the protocol, and he came up with a physiologically impossible excuse.
Yes, he wanted to look people in the eye, and he can't do that with a mask on, apparently. Right. No, I think that both Pence and Trump and a lot of people in leadership positions, on the one hand, there are those leaders who want to promote safe health practices by example and are wearing masks. And then there are those who want to promote a sense of courage or confidence that everything's okay, and so they don't wear the masks. So when we see people who are not wearing masks, it can be very easy to go into an anger reaction. And anger is a response to a perceived threat. Anger is what's on top of fear. It's an appropriate response sometimes. We sense that we are in danger, and so we go into fight or flight, and anger is the fight part of that. And so having that emotional reaction makes a lot of sense. Whether you want to respond from that place of anger and confront or yell at or honk a horn at or physically accost somebody who's not wearing a mask, you might want to consider what the reaction to that might be and whether that's actually the best use of your energy. And it's easier to keep from having that kind of strong response if you can at least understand where the people who are not wearing masks are coming from.
So let's say I'm in a store and I'm wearing a mask and I'm trying to do all the right stuff, and I'm in line with people who are not respecting 6-foot distances, who aren't wearing masks, and I feel unsafe because of that, and it makes me angry, upset, scared, and there's not a whole lot of time in a moment like that, and you're out in public, so it feels kind of risky.
Right.
But what do you do in that moment?
Well,
how do you negotiate that?
You can take care of yourself. Certainly you can back away if you've got space. If you don't, you can ask the other person, would you mind giving me a little bit more distance? That's not shaming them for not wearing a mask. That's simply saying, and you can say this too, I would feel safer if you don't mind stepping back a bit. And if they won't, we can't control other people's behavior. If they won't, then we may have to take a few steps back ourselves or just go to the other aisle or something. If what our actual goal is to stay safe, we can control our own behavior in the moment much more readily than we can control somebody else's.
I know there's no convincing anybody of anything, but do you think that there's any way of, let's say you and we're married, we live in the same place, but we have difference of opinion about this. Let's say you don't feel the need to wear masks, you don't feel all that concerned. I do, and I'm wearing a mask, I'm staying home more, but I feel like your behavior is endangering me. How do we negotiate that when you are you're feeling as grounded in your belief in non-threat as I am in my belief in threat?
Well, I hope that in a relationship such as ours,
or even a workplace,
I would hope that you could speak to the non-mask wearer's basic compassion and say something like, I know you don't think that there's a concern, and I'm not going to try to convince you otherwise, but it scares me when you're not following safety protocols. So out of compassion for my sense of safety, do you think that you could inconvenience yourself a little bit to help me feel a little bit safe? And the analogy that I use is, I don't think that your partner who is not wearing a mask or your coworker who is not wearing a mask would be okay with, say, drunk driving, because they say, well, if I get hurt, it's just me, and everybody's responsible for themselves. I think that a lot of people choose not to drive drunk, not only for their own sense of well-being, but for a sense of wanting to protect other people. And so as fatalistic as you might be as an individual, a lot of people do have a sense of social responsibility when it comes to a very wide range of other behaviors. And so if you can impress upon them that this is simply like that, maybe that can help.
So is this a way also into, let's say, talking to someone who's taking the sort of libertarian argument or the personal freedom argument? You can't tell me what to do. I'm not going to do what any government official says I have to do. I'm just going to live the life that I want to live. Is that kind of sense of it's not just about you, it's about this larger community, a way into engaging with someone like that?
I hope so. Libertarians can be pretty strong-willed about that, but yeah, hopefully you can appeal to their humanity and say, I totally get your libertarian perspective, and yet it still, your behavior does have an effect on me.
And I'm not saying it's just libertarians who are doing this, but I was sort of thinking that's emblematic of a particular kind of mindset.
I think that the underlying theme of all of this is no matter what your opinion is of other people's behaviors, it helps to start by acknowledging that their behavior comes from an actual conviction and set of beliefs that are real and important to them. We don't have to agree with them, but it helps to acknowledge them out of the gate, and that's going to be a useful tool to help engage them in cooperative behavior. If you start with the bottom line of you're wrong, you're bad, you're an idiot, you're screwing me over, they're far less likely to listen than if you start with, look, your choices are yours and I get where you're coming from, and yet there's also some concern that I have for myself and I wonder if we can reach an agreement.
Yeah. And that really, that kind of negotiation is what we see hopefully in any kind of relational situation where, you know, couples are in conflict all the time, or people in their workplace are in conflict all the time, and there's usually sort of two branches of approach, and one is a more aggressive, trying to be right first, and another is an acknowledgement of someone's personal experience and perspective and worldview, but that there's a shared reality that you have to contend with.
Yeah, and so we're talking about empathy again, and it starts with acknowledging the other person's belief system and opinion and worldview, and acknowledging it and validating it does not mean agreeing with it, and does not mean condoning it. It's simply saying, I see your perspective and I respect your right to have your perspective. I don't happen to agree with it, so let's see where we can go with both of us feeling validated in our belief system, but finding a compromise that we can both live with.
Because ultimately, it's not really about what you believe, it's what you're trying to accomplish. What do you want? And this comes, it's funny because Mark and I both come out of the theater, and this is a classic conversation that you have when you're working on a scene, is what does each character want, and how are they going about getting it? And the tactics that you take are the kind of craft of acting. It's like, how am I going to get him to give me $10? And I'm going to might try to seduce him into it, or bully him into it, or logically argue him into it. But one of the sort of almost like upper tier tricks in scene work in theater is not only getting the person to get you what you want, but having them like it, and even maybe thinking that it's their idea. And so
that sounds a little more manipulative than it is.
I don't mean it quite like that. But it's a bigger win if the person is doing it willingly, on board.
And feeling good about their choice.
Right, rather than being
begrudgingly.
Coerced, obligatory.
Yes, bullied into it, forced into it.
Yeah. And part of me has been wondering if, like, part of the argument for people who are not comfortable wearing masks is say, well, Deadpool wore a mask, Spider-Man wore a mask. You could be a superhero by wearing a mask because you are, and I don't know if that argument flies with those people who are not mired in MCU, but who knows? I mean, I would imagine part of it has to do with also how people want to be seen.
Yeah.
And what kind of person do I want to be? How do I want to be perceived in the world? What kind of role do I want to play in life, almost?
Yeah.
And do I want to be a rebel? Do I want to be a leader? Do I want to be a hero? Do I want to be a good guy? Do I want to be a trickster and contrarian and upend things just for the sake of causing chaos? And so maybe that's also sort of like understanding sort of how a person sees themselves is part of helping negotiate that conversation.
Right, and if you can show them examples where they have set aside their own personal needs for the greater good in other instances, you can appeal to that and say, look, you do this in this other instance. What is it about this? Is there a way in which we could bring that sensibility into this particular situation?
Do you want a black mask with fangs on it? Would that help?
Right.
Okay, so we're at 20 minutes. I think it's probably lunchtime for most people. If you have questions, topics you want us to address, feel free to email info@headyvermont.com, or if you want to contact Mark directly for his wisdom and guidance, you can contact him at
Actually, you can do questions through info.
info@headyvermont.com. So we hope you have a gorgeous day. We hope it's getting warmer and you're feeling a little bit more sanguine about where life is headed. And if not, there's always weed, right? Okay, have a wonderful afternoon.